Do you got Nexus? Do you? I don't know. It's changing all the time. So luckily we got somebody who knows what they're talking about here. So Paul, state sales tax is a huge topic right now. And the hidden one is the state income tax that goes along with having Nexus. So do you want to shed some thoughts on this ever-changing topic? And people just know that it is always changing. So just be aware with that.
Yeah, it really is changing. And I think a lot of people will go online and they'll read blogs about a Supreme Court case from last summer called Wayfair versus South Dakota, or South Dakota v. Wayfair, and say, oh, well, physical presence, which is what the blogs used to say was a requirement, is no longer required. If I do 200 sales in a state, I have Nexus. And so what is Nexus? Nexus is about having a connection with a state to a point where the state then is within its rights to assert jurisdiction over you. Okay, and so there's two types of Nexus. There's Nexus under the Due Process Clause, and there's Nexus under the Commerce Clause. And the one that you read about a lot in the blogs is what we call Commerce Clause Nexus. It's a specific tax kind of nexus, whereas Due Process Nexus is broad. It's about, can you get sued in a state? Can a state do this to you? Can they Prop 65, which is another topic for another day. But I mean, it's all of these other laws of whether you can be subject to the jurisdiction of the state. The big misconception that I've been fighting is this notion that, well, Amazon warehousing must be Nexus. And people really need to get educated on the fact that FBA warehouses, I don't care what the biggest software companies tell you, they're not lawyers, they're not law firms, they don't really study constitutional law. I actually teach this course in New York. And, when you're submitting your stuff to Amazon, usually you submit it to one state or maybe 2 or 3 states, and then somehow it ends up in, California. Well, you didn't put it in California. You didn't purposefully avail yourself of California. You didn't target California. So it's highly questionable whether you actually have a nexus in California solely based on an FBA relationship. And even if you do, I try to get people to understand that nexus isn't the only question here when it comes to sales tax. I can have nexus in a state, but if I'm not a retailer, if I'm not the legal retailer, I'm not the one making the sale, I'm not the one responsible for collecting sales tax. And when you sell to Amazon, as much as we like to call ourselves retailers, I'll call Amazon sellers merchants, because you're definitely selling something, but you're not selling directly to the consumer. At the end of the day, Amazon, who controls the relationship, it's Amazon's customer, not your customer. You don't have a right to market to it. It's not the same as selling in a mall, right, where you have your own store, your own signage, your own right to collect customer information, market to that customer. Amazon plays a little game, and that's all well and good, but Amazon really is a retailer, and it's really their responsibility. Now, that's actually happening. A lot of states have changed the laws. I've argued that those law changes aren't necessary, as well as the state of South Carolina, Louisiana, Arizona. I mean, we're seeing a lot more of this, but it's happening one way or the other. So thankfully, the biggest tax exposure for most Amazon sellers on a multi-state basis is the sales tax. And we're seeing that come to an end. By the end of 2019, most states that are probably going to be meaningful to you will be doing sales tax collection, the one exception being Florida. But, there's other constitutional law provisions out there that would say that Florida, doesn't have the right to make a small micro business owner a tax collector when they have the ability to make someone like Amazon that tax collector. It makes so much more sense. It's much less burden on interstate commerce. So just keep that in mind. The laws are changing. Don't go running out and registering in every state, especially if you're selling on Amazon. If you have a Shopify business and an Amazon business, consider how much are you really selling on Shopify. I mean, just understand that the cost of being registered in every state, it's not just sales tax. If you register for sales tax, a lot of the states are going to expect income tax or franchise tax or property tax or some other type of funky tax, commercial activity tax for those of you who live in Ohio, all this other stuff. Registering with the Secretary of State, they're going to say, well, why you register sales tax, why you register with the Secretary of State? So just be mindful that there's a lot of misinformation out there. The biggest tax software company names out there are unfortunately purveying a lot of this misinformation because they want you to sign up for their software. Better come talk to a tax expert who really knows Amazon and knows the law. I work with a team of tax lawyers. I work with some of the best tax lawyers in the country within my firm and outside of my firm with the Online Merchants Guild effort to fight for sellers. We retain some of the best tax lawyers in the country, and we're all, surprised that, these small micro businesses are signing up in every state and just learning, it makes it miserable. You're not going to want to do business if you sign up in every state, and the states really don't have a right.
You would need so much. No, I guess it is always important to think of when somebody's telling you something, what are their interests? Everybody's selling something. Okay. If somebody's making a piece of content on the internet, unless it's like their personal hobby blog, they're selling something down the road. That's always good to know. But it's like, what are their interests? With large tax softwares, it's like, how do they make money?
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's always many interpretations of the law is what we're trying to get across here. You always want to get multiple people's viewpoints, all who have different interests in mind, and then make a personal decision for yourself. Everybody's got their own interpretation. The law is not this thing that is exact. It is.
Right. And it's just dangerous. I mean, it can cost you more. And this is a personal passion project of mine. I have a lot of tax clients. We have a lot of folks, but most of my clients come from the software companies. They come from accountants who gave them advice, go, register and do this and that. And then now they get a bill for $1 million and they need legal help that, typically lawyers who do this type of work are working for the Fortune 500 and charge insane fees. I'm pivoting to try to help those folks because my heart goes out to them because, like I said, I teach this course in New York. This one issue is a passion project of mine. I really do believe it's wrong. And if you Google me and you read my articles, and I've written Supreme Court briefs on this, I mean, this is 100% has been the biggest load of misinformation. The state governments have it wrong, and they're wrong a lot. I spent 15 years of my life litigating tax cases. Government's wrong. I prove them wrong all the time. In my world, it's just not normal for small businesses to have to be in a situation where they need to be proving the government wrong. But unfortunately, a number of states are getting they're getting their own tax advice from Amazon, who's taking the position that it's the sellers, not them, who's responsible, and and states don't respect the Constitution. So
sad. It could be so easy for Amazon to do. It just made a better experience for the Amazon customer that they could essentially avoid.
Oh, right. And it's been written about in books.
Oh, no, you guys do it. Even though we know none of you can handle this.
Right. Well,
for benefits, like Amazon should be doing this. They're the merchant.
You think about why didn't, and this is like, I just wrote a letter to a legislator in California, Buffy Wicks, on some other Amazon stuff, and brought this up about transparency in the language. And what happened is all these sellers fell victim to the greatest, sort of speed trap in interstate commerce. It's like nobody even told the sellers that this could be a possibility, because you know what? I'm not saying every seller would have registered in South Dakota because of, having found out that there's a potential, but in a state like California, where a typical seller gets 15 to 20% of their sales, most sellers would have probably registered, and Amazon pushed a note through Seller Central to say, hey, you should consider doing this, right? Even though I don't think it's the right answer, even though I don't think the sellers are liable in California, I don't think it was, they have a regulation 1569. It says that Amazon's responsible. The treasurer of California has written a letter to the governor saying Amazon should be responsible, and she used to be the head of sales tax. Despite all of that, most sellers probably would have registered, at least in the state of California where their exposure was the highest. The fact that they didn't, and the fact that Amazon didn't tell them, it's no mistake. Amazon didn't want people to collect because that would ruin their good thing of having a tax-free marketplace. And then passing. Yeah,
I mean, and I think that the argument here is just that it's impossible to comply unless you've got millions of dollars or like a complex. It's impossible.
I used to work in Walmart's tax department. I was a tax litigator for Walmart for a number of years. And believe me, it's not easy. They have hundreds of people working in sales tax, right? It's crazy. 50 state compliance is hard work. And if you're just a small micro business, unless you're planning to hire a tax accounting team and handle income tax, sales tax, it's a 6-figure venture that could shut down your business pretty quickly just to try and comply, and you'll never get it right. There'll always be notices and crazy things happening. These companies have notice departments, right, that handle all those mystery letters. Like, why am I getting $1 million bill from Illinois? What did I do? It's like you've got whole teams dedicated to answering those questions. It's like, how are you going to do that? And that goes to the Wayfair case. Again, be clear what the court said. They never said that the states could do what they're doing to Wayfair to small businesses. They were very clear that actually, in order to impose a tax burden on small businesses, the states do have to make it easy. There has to be, an abundance of software out there that's really good, that can make it easy. That does not happen yet. There's been state streamlined programs, but only a number of states have been part of it, and it's still not even close to what it should be. The way I say it is, in 25 years between the last Supreme Court case on this issue and the most recent one, the states really had a lot of time to get up to speed with technology, and they didn't. And because of that, they don't deserve a dime of any money that they don't get from the big companies. They really don't. They can get it from Amazon. They can get it from the big, huge companies like Wayfair, just as the Supreme Court said, but the Supreme Court did make it very clear that there's still a case for small businesses, and that this case would not be about that. That future case was still open and ready to be brought. And believe me, I'm working on it. But, just do yourself a favor. Just because a company that went public 2 weeks before Wayfair tells you you have an obligation to collect tax in 50 states, don't take it at face value. There is a game there, and it's unfortunate. It bothers me that that's happening. And so if you're just starting out, or even if you're a 7-figure seller, just be aware of what you're getting into.
Yes. So let's summarize and make it clear here. We're not saying if you have Nexus to not pay. No, terrible. No, that is not the thing here. The thing here is of saying what is Nexus is essentially what your argument of what you're talking about here, correct?
It's a number of things. It's what is Nexus, what is constitutionally required of you, like what does the Constitution allow states to do just because you have Nexus. If you have Nexus and it costs an exorbitant amount of money to collect sales tax in 50 states, there's a problem, right? Or if you have Nexus and you're not a legal retailer under the state tax law, because the state tax law definition of a retailer has nothing to do with what title of record or any of those things when you have very clear tax laws. Because, well, if it did, well, imagine if you walked into your local Walmart store or Target store and you went and bought an iPad and you take the iPad to the cash register and on checkout you pay no sales tax, and being an inquisitive person like you are, you say, why did I pay sales tax? And the person says, well, you might not have noticed, but when you picked that iPad off the shelf, it said sold by Apple. So it's really their responsibility to collect the sales tax, not Target's. I don't think Target would get away with that for very long, and nor should Amazon. But that's effectively what Amazon has done with their marketplace and with the sales tax game. But the law is the law, and the law says if you're transferring title and possession of the goods to the consumer, then you are the retailer. And when you use FBA, especially if you're using FBA and Amazon's delivering the product and they make that transfer of title official, the contract, you don't even have a contract with the customer, they should be deemed the legal retailer under state law. So you've got a state law defense, you've got a nexus defense under the Constitution, you've got an undue burden defense in the Constitution. There's a lot of reasons, though. I'm not saying this is going to work for everybody. Everybody's situation is different. And especially if you're selling on more than one channel like Shopify and Amazon, right? You may have to do some tax collection if you're a Shopify seller. If you're doing $100,000 of sales in the state of South Dakota, you may want to start collecting sales tax in South Dakota, honestly, at that point. But you're probably doing a lot more elsewhere if you're doing that too. So I don't feel too bad. But for people who are just starting out and really just focused on fulfillment by Amazon, don't just go jumping into a whole bunch of states. The laws are changing and so much is unsettled. And really, in my industry of tax lawyers, a lot of whom unfortunately do work for Amazon and can't speak as openly as I can. It's one of the reasons I decided to be in my own practice, because I realized very quickly law firms don't like it when you trash the most desired client in the world.
Yeah. Okay. Great, guys. So this is a interpretation of the law. Everybody has different ones. So get a multiple viewpoints. If you need help with sales tax, Paul, do you guys have something around that, or are you just?
Oh yeah, we do. We have tons of sales tax clients. We don't fill out the forms. I mean, you know, a lot of our clients use the software companies, but it's just like, it's like knowing when to use it, right? Like sometimes, you know, you need to know when you need something, right? And obviously the person who makes the thing you need will say you always need it. It's sort of my job to help you. But, you know, plenty of clients who use those software companies and other services from other accountants. I mean, you know, I do tax consults with accountants on the phone all the time because I really do want to educate on the issue. But please come talk to us. You know, we do these comprehensive consults where we review your tax, your legal, your IP. And, you know, if you're at that stage of your business where that makes sense for you, if you're not, we still have to talk to you. We'd love to meet young sellers because we hope that one day you'll become big sellers. That's our goal with every client, is to help them grow. But definitely don't want to fall in a trap of, you know, being, you know, told you need to file income sales tax in 50 states and only finding out that you actually didn't need to.
Yeah. Well, Paul, ecom agent. No, ecom.
Ecomattorneys.com.
Ecomattorneys.com. Check it out. And yeah, if you guys have questions, leave a thoughtful question. And we love to talk about this stuff. And yeah, and if you need specific advice for your company, check out Paul. And yeah, hope that this was helpful. And yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, it's clear as mud right now, but you know, we help companies deal. We respect the fact that you're a micro business and we help micro businesses operate, and that's what we do. And we know the lines and the limits. Just all I can say is just don't go blogging, and I hope to hear from some of you.
Awesome, guys. Thanks. Well, I'm sure we'll talk to Paul again in the future. Talk to him in the past, the present. And if there's a big update, we'll definitely talk to him again. All right. Are you an international seller? And you're like, well, does this apply to me? We'll cover that quickly in another video.